Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
This is episode number 358, How to Avoid Dating Dangerous Emotional Predators. Hello, everybody. This is Sandy Weiner, and welcome to Last First Date Radio, the place to be for creating healthy, lasting relationships after 40. And today I'm going to be speaking with psychotherapist and mediator Stephen Wolhandler about how to avoid dating dangerous emotional predators. As a dating and relationship coach at Last First Date, my greatest passion is helping women over 40 show up more fully in their lives, stand up for what matters most, and speak up more powerfully. And I call that being a woman of value. Here is this week's tip on how to be a woman of value. Learn how to delegate. This was one of the hardest things for me. I never would ask for help, and raise your hand if you have trouble asking people for help, whether it's in business or in your love life or in any other part of your life. Just learning how to delegate the things that you don't want to do or you can't do changes your life for the better so much. I mean, it's amazing. Just today, my son was home. He's starting his shift late tonight. He's going to be doing a late night shift. And so I asked him to cook up something for me, and I had the most delicious lunch of eggplant parmesan that he cooked for me. So that was a great way of delegating because I was busy at work and he was not. So do something today to delegate out something that you don't enjoy and give it to somebody who would be happy to help you. Before I bring on my guest, Stephen Wolhandler, I just wanted to let you know that I have a free Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date, and it is a beautiful group of women over 40 who are either dating, they're already in relationships, but they are looking to grow and be the best they can be. This is not a place to vent and whine and complain and talk about how awful dating is and how men suck. We don't allow that in my group. This is a place to talk about the things that frustrate you. That's fine. As long as you're looking for a solution and you want to grow, you are more than welcome to join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my guest, Stephen Wolhandler. He has a lot of initials after his name. He was a lawyer, has a master's in an MA, an LPC. I'm not sure what that is. He's a psychotherapist. He's a mediator. He's a consultant, and he used to be an attorney. And he knows how abusive and manipulative people prey on the emotions of good people and how those people can protect themselves. He has decades of experience dealing with and learning from toxic manipulators and helping their victims and with penetrating insight, effective strategies, and humor. He offers a radically different view of these emotional predators, and he provides practical, effective solutions. And he has a new book, and we're going to be talking all about emotional predators, what to look for, how to avoid them, how to stay safe when you're dating. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you, Sandy. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I'm excited about this topic. So before we get deeper into the topic, I just would love to have you share with us what inspired you to immerse yourself so deeply into the topic of toxic manipulators.
Well, I wouldn't say I was inspired to immerse myself. It's not a pleasant topic, but I've worked for several decades as a therapist and a mediator and an arbitrator and a custody evaluator in the family court system, and this has been an experience of a lot of dealing with a lot of very, very difficult, toxic people that I've come to understand, and I call them emotional predators. And some of the fallout from worked with a lot of decent people who've had relationships with these predators and helped a lot of people learn how to deal with them and how to spot them and And I've had, over the years, I had a lot of clients say, you need to write all this stuff down and put it all in one place so that a wider audience can learn about the dangers of these predators, who these people are, what they're like, and how to protect yourself and how to steer clear of them. So it's really out of that work, mostly in the family court system.
Mhm. So that I'm sure you've seen quite a bit in the family court system. There can be some really ugly stuff that goes down there.
Yeah, and I'd like to say at the start that the topic of emotional predators and how to protect yourself from emotional predators can sound very negative, and people who've either had known people that have been mistreated in the past, or they themselves have been mistreated. To talk about this topic and focus on it is not to say that everyone is like this, or if all men are like this, or anybody you're going to date, watch out, they're all bad. It's a very small percentage of the population. Most men somebody's going to try to date. Most men are reasonable, decent, good people, and same for most women. If you're a man looking to date women, it doesn't matter who you're looking to date. Most people are decent people, but this very small fraction of the population, these emotional predators, they can be very dangerous, and it only takes one to really mess things up. So it's helpful to be able to spot them and know how to deal with them.
Yeah, for sure. And I told you before we started that just last night I was giving my 1-hour masterclass on red flags and really focusing on the emotional predators. And it sounds like really scary when you hear the whole list of people who are pretty dangerous. But it's I think even if people have found even part of these personality types, they can be huge red flags and people to stay away from. So let's get into it. What is an emotional predator?
Well, in short, an emotional predator is someone who exploits other people by tuning into and preying upon the emotions of their targets. That's what they're emotional predators. They prey on other people's emotions and emotional vulnerabilities. Now, there are a lot of labels. You can call them personality disorders, narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, borderline personalities, narcissistic sociopaths, sociopathic narcissists, malignant personalities, toxic personalities. It goes on. There are a lot of ways, but I think emotional predator covers all of that and really sums up what these people are like and how they operate. And one of the key things about them that makes them so dangerous is that emotional predators operate by stealth. They're hidden, and they know how to hide from other people and conceal what they're really like, and that's a core thing. And decent people tend to make a fundamental mistake if they assume that because, they are decent and good, they assume that everyone else is basically like that. Most people are basically like that, but again, a small minority, a dangerous minority, are not. So it's not a safe assumption that I'm a good person, so everyone else must be a good person. One of the core attributes of an emotional predator, they're hidden. They hide what they're really about. They relentlessly seek to dominate, win, control, and they have no empathy or conscience and to restrain them. So for an emotional predator, life is a strategy game to dominate and control, and another person is either another player to be defeated or a game piece to be used. So again, on the thing that they're not like the rest of us. And it's fun. They don't think the way we do. They don't hold the same values. They don't believe the same things. They don't have the same attitudes. And they don't behave in the same ways. And again, and I'm repeating this, but a core attribute is that they lack empathy. And by empathy, that's a word that gets used a lot, but what I mean by empathy is an immediate, congruent emotional reaction to another person's emotional state. And that that's not the same thing as sensitivity to another person's emotion. An emotional predator can be highly sensitive to your emotions, but they're not going to have a congruent emotional experience, meaning if you're really sad, they're not going to suddenly feel really sad. If you're really sad, they may feel excited because it gives them an opportunity to manipulate you. So it's not having empathy is not the same as having sensitivity to other people's feelings.
Right. It's like
so
putting yourself in their shoes.
Yes.
That's how I see it.
And empathy is automatically puts you emotionally in the other person's shoes. If the example I've given people is that if I'm in a great mood and I walk into a room where 3 people are standing and they just received news that somebody's family was killed in a car wreck and they're all devastated, and I walk into that room in a good mood, my emotional state will automatically shift to be in sync with what's happening in the room. I'll feel it, and then I'll start feeling the upset. An emotional predator, hard as this is to believe, could walk into a room like that, and they're good at faking the appropriate responses. They know how to put on a facade, but their inner response to that situation could be, how can I use this to my advantage? These people seem particularly vulnerable right now. What can I get out of this? So that's a quick summary of emotional predators. They lack empathy. They hide what they're really about, their true nature, and they're relentlessly driven to feel the experience of dominating or controlling or having power over other people. They have to win. So that's a quick summary of what I think they are.
Yeah, those are all not good things. So I have a quick question just on the psychology of a predator. What leads to a person becoming an emotional predator?
Oh, that is in the old days we'd call it the $60,000 question. I don't know, inflation. I don't know what that question is now worth, but that is a golden question to which in my book and in general, I punt on that question because I believe it can be a mixture of nature and nurture. To some extent, I think people are born with some people, like a psychopath is a good example, which is a type of emotional predator. A psychopath seems to be born without the capacity for empathy. And there are a number of books. There was a seminal book on the subject by a guy named Robert Hare, Hare. He wrote a book called Without Conscience, The Frightening World of the Psychopath Among Us. And he talked about the lack of conscience and then the lack of empathy. And a Harvard professor named Martha Stout, S-T-O-U-T, she wrote a book called The Sociopath Next Door. And she also she touched on this topic, and she speculated that it was, and I agree with her, maybe a combination of nature and nurture. So if you're born with impaired capacity for empathy, as I like to say, as you were coming down the assembly line, the circuit for empathy just never got soldered to the motherboard, and so it's just not happening. And then you grow up with very nurturing, very caring, good parents and a good nurturing environment. You might become a good political leader or something, or I talk often about the professions that emotional predators are drawn to. You could become, a positive member of society. But if you are born that way and you're brought up in a series of crack houses or something, I mean, and in a horrible environment, you might be more inclined to become a sort of an out-and-out psychopath. But for me, that question is an academic one that is of less interest to me, because I'm more interested in the practical effects of these people on the lives of the people they target, and what a good person can do as a practical matter. And so that's a question that I just you see me wandering around. I really don't have an answer to, and I mean, I'll leave that to greater minds to to sort out.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it is a bunch of different things, and nature and nurture is how I always saw it also. But let's get into how we can spot those emotional predators and protect ourselves from them.
Very quickly on that last topic, one of the things that misleads and is a mistake, I believe, for good people is a natural instinct is, well, why are they like that? And what if I could understand why he's like that, then maybe I could help fix him. I think that's a lost. That's a fool's errand and very dangerous. Yeah. You know, more important just to know this is how this person is, and this is how they're dangerous. But so your question is, how do we spot them? Let's see, and protect ourselves. Well, the first thing you have to do, of course, to protect yourself, you have to identify them behind the disarming facades that they use. They're charming, they're innocent, they're seductive, they're helpful, they have facades of normalcy. And how do you spot them? Well, let's see. Well, for dating, one of the things that can happen is it's not that easy to spot these people right away sometimes. Sometimes it's obvious right out of the gate, but sometimes you have to have a number of experiences, and you have to sort of check your facts, if you will, and get some background information, because it may not be apparent right away. But they will play, when they're dating, they tend to play a bait and switch game, so that they'll bait you with everything you want to hear, and then once you've been seduced by hearing all the things you want to hear, then they will switch to becoming controlling, accusing, manipulating. So a classic is, you start dating someone, and at first they appear to be all about you, right? But once you're committed in some way to the relationship, then suddenly it switches to their real game, which is making everything all about them, and you have to be tuned into that. But let's see. Let me talk about some common traits. Again, you might not see these traits until they started to do the switch, but they will relentlessly manage their public image. They can be very seductive. And I say to people, if you're dating someone and they seem too good to be true, they might be. That's worth looking a little more carefully at. You know, good, decent people, you know, are a mixture of positive and negative features, and that shouldn't be a problem. So another things they'll do, I'll just tick these off quickly. You might notice they avoid giving direct answers to direct questions. They might offer excuses, justifications, instead of just changing a negative behavior. They need to control. They need to have it their way. So you find with someone like this, you start to notice you're kind of on a one-way street relationship where everything has to be their way or nothing. Another way people talk about it's my way or the highway. Or you're with me or against me. And if you start to you may not see these things right away. Again, another trait, they tend to provoke others into emotional reactions. If you find it's a person that's, you know, upsetting or upsetting you in some ways frequently or putting you off balance emotionally. Another thing they tend to do is they claim to be the victim, often of the people that they're actually victimizing. They're very good at faking sincerity and making emotional displays to charm you or maybe to intimidate you and certainly to seduce you. Another thing they will do is they will pretend to be ignorant or pretend to be innocent. You know, they'll do something really, really off, and you sort of call them on it. And you say, you know, what was that about? And they'll you know, what are you talking about? I didn't do that, or I didn't know. And, you know, a good person will, of course, want to give someone the benefit of the doubt. Oh, okay, well, it's useful to be tuned into this kind of thing. They also will do something. They'll do something called they'll trap other people in what I call a no-win bind. It's a situation where you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And that is something that can be a little tricky to to notice sometimes. But let's see, if I said yes, then he's going to complain about this. But if I said no, then he'd complain about the other thing. Well, that's another trait of emotional predators. A few more quickly. They will tend to, and this may not happen right away, but they tend to isolate and gaslight. That's a term many people are familiar with. Actually, look up gaslighting on Wikipedia. It's got a very good definition of it. They'll gaslight you, and you start to notice, and this may happen over time, not on a first or second date. You start getting cut off from your friends and family. They don't want to see your friends and family. If you go to see them without him, then he'll punish you in some way, either by picking a fight before you go out to see your friends and family, or when you come back picking a fight or being cold and distant. Another thing they'll do is they'll create havoc or confusion or chaos out of what, if you step back from it, you go, it's a simple thing. Do you want to have Chinese food or Indian food? Why has this become a big problem? Well, they'll tend to create big problems out of nothing. The other thing they can do, which is very subtle and most people don't notice, is they can disrupt your natural rhythms. So, calling you when you're at work and you ask not to be called at work. Just interrupting your sleep is a classic. I had an example of somebody who was married to someone, actually. He actually married him, and he would wake her up in the middle of the night because he had to talk about something that was very important. But she had to get her sleep at work, so that's another one. Two more quick traits. They tend to be hypocrites, and again, you might not notice this right away. They will ignore the rules of society or the law. They'll ignore the rules when it serves them, but they'll expect other people to follow the rules when that's what serves them. They're going to say or do anything to get what they want, if they think they can get away with it, of course. And then later they'll just reverse themselves, and again, they'll pretend to be ignorant or innocent about it. They'll deny that they've even done anything. So they're consummate hypocrites. And the last thing is they can also tend to know it all. They can be very intolerant of different views and beliefs. And you might not notice that right away, but then you start to see a sort of a rigidity come into your experience of them. So those are some common traits. Very quickly, some common attitudes. They can be arrogant and entitled or self-righteous or condescending. And those things at first, they can appear as self-confidence. But after a while, you start to go, this has a negative feel to it. They can be impatient, intolerant, irritable, and that happens particularly when they don't get their way. And they can kind of, after a while, you see this person's acting like a spoiled toddler. They're sort of complaining or having a tantrum when they haven't gotten things the way they want it. And then there's two other attitudes that you can find. They can be angry and dismissive and imperious. Or, on the other hand, they can play for sympathy by making a big display of being meek or humble or pretending to be bewildered or pretending to play the martyr. And either of those extremes is a red flag for me. And so, there's some other things. I don't know if we have time to get into sort of professions that they tend to be drawn to.
Mia, let's skip that for now because we're getting short on time. But let's talk about because this was really thorough about how to recognize them. Let's talk about protection. What are I think you have 5 steps for protection.
Oh yes. Well, the 5 steps for protection very quickly are: 1, you have to spot them. That's what we've just been talking about. You have to see these people. 2, you have to know yourself better than they know you. And particularly, you have to know your emotionally vulnerable places, the things that are your core beliefs, your core values. You have to know them because those are the things they're going to know about you that they're going to use to manipulate you. The 3rd step is you have to be willing to adjust your core beliefs and your core values. And so step 2 and 3 kind of run together. And then step 4 and 5 are they're less necessary for initial dating. But step 4 is if you recognize you're involved with one of these people or one of them is coming into your life, disengage. As I say in the book, run away. Run away. Get away from these people. That's step 4. But if step 5, which hopefully wouldn't apply to most people who are, are thinking about this in terms of dating, is if you find one of these people in your life and you cannot or choose not to disengage, maybe you have children with this person, or it's a boss at a job that you can't lose, well, then you need to be strategic and not emotionally reactive. Because one of the things these people do is they'll provoke you into emotional reactions that don't help you. But as far as dating, it's the second and third steps: knowing yourself and where you're emotionally vulnerable and making some slight adjustments in those things. I mean,
what do you mean by, just to clarify, what do you mean by adjusting your core values? Because to me, core values are core to who we are. So what does that mean?
That's a great question. Well, let me see if I can give you an example. If my core value is that to be a good person, and to be a good person, I should be open and honest with everyone. That's my core value. To be a good person is to be open and honest. Well, I say I don't have a value judgment about that as a core value. I mean, people are completely entitled to have that value. But if you choose to be open and honest with emotional predators, you're going to have a very hard time with things, because they're going to take your honesty and they're going to take the information you share with them and use it to manipulate you. And I've seen this happen over and over again. So I would say an adjustment to that would be, to be a good person is to be open and honest with trustworthy, good people. But with vicious manipulators, to be a good person is to be a little more strategically wise and to keep your own counsel and not expose yourself. So that would be an adjustment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And so, what I've told clients who have fallen for people like this is to, first of all, stop doing so much at the beginning and really observe before you commit, and let somebody earn the depth of who you are. It's not something that you just offer up right away. And so a lot of people overshare at the beginning, and they have such big hearts and they're so used to giving that they don't know how to step back and not give until they see that the person is worthy of their giving.
That is exactly accurate. I mean, that is exactly on point. I tell people that in dating, you think you're, I tell people, look, be careful, be aware of, what's the expression? The expression is, there's a word for this, keep your pearls, what's important to you. There's a problem, it shouldn't be a problem with respecting yourself, resisting your desire. You have to know what's closest to your heart and resist your desire to share it too quickly. Because your fears and your hopes, your romantic desires and fantasies, financial dreams, things that gratify people. I say to people, a mature person will respect your privacy and is not going to intrude or invade, and seek to get all these personal things about you. And what you said is spot on. I tell people, it's observe yourself and your reactions, your responses, and the other person. And that's a very, very important thing.
Yeah, and I think a mature person definitely respects your privacy. They also respect your pacing. And I know that a lot of emotional predators will escalate the relationship really quickly. And so that is also a big red flag. But let's talk about some general tips for staying safe and protecting yourself as we come to the end of the show.
Well, a couple of general tips. Again, we touched on this. You have to come to learn about yourself, however you do that. With a good therapist, or there are many, many ways, good books. There are many ways people learn about themselves. Know what your blind spots are. I think it's important to distinguish between romance, which is so attractive to most of us, and what I would call mature loving, which again has to do with respect and not imposing, someone else's pace on you. Hang on just a sec. You need to be realistic about human nature. Again, we touched on this. I think it's important to drop a naive belief that because you are decent and good, everyone else is. And on the other side, just to know that there are dangerous people out there, predators, does not mean that everyone is like that. So there's room to recognize both types of people. I would say knowing yourself and loving yourself. I would say one of the tips that I think has been most important to a lot of people I've worked with is turn the golden rule inward. And the golden rule, it's stated different ways, but, treat other people the way you would like to be treated. But before you get to that, I think it's most important to treat yourself in every aspect of yourself the way you would like to be treated. Respect yourself. Take care of yourself. Honor yourself. And the more you do these things, the more you treat yourself that way, the less vulnerable you are, the less emotionally weak and vulnerable and susceptible to being manipulated. And right along with what you were just saying, I think another great tip is to be curious. Just be infinitely curious, observing about yourself and the other person, and get outside opinions. Trusted friends. And a trusted friend, I think, is somebody who would take the risk of telling you something you don't want to hear. Because when we're kind of starting to be a little infatuated with someone, sometimes our friends don't want to say, maybe you should step back and take another look at this guy. And so it's hard to seek out friends and give them permission. Give them permission to tell you, hey, I want the honest truth from you, my friend. Tell me what you really think. You've seen me and him together, you've listened to me, or you've read the emails, or whatever it is. What do you really see here? What do you think? Because it's not really valuable to ask your friend what do they think, and they give you a rubber stamp because they don't want to risk their friendship with you.
Yeah, often people don't want to hear it or they're not ready to hear it. And it's interesting that I have a close friend who I lost contact with after I got engaged to my husband. And years later, I would say 30 years later, after my divorce, I said to her one day, why did you stop talking to me? And I thought it was because she really wanted to get married and she was jealous and I was getting married before her. No. She said, you became a different person in his presence. He was controlling you and we were really scared for you. But nobody said anything to me. Nobody.
Oh.
And so I really appreciated her honesty. And now I would have a relationship where somebody would tell me the truth, and I would be able to spot somebody who wasn't healthy for me. But that's why I have such a passion of, around sharing this material with people, because I think we don't have to get duped. We can go in eyes wide open and make better choices and have healthier, more lasting relationships. And it's never too late. It doesn't matter what your past is. You can learn these things at any stage in life. I truly believe that.
That is definitely true. Do you have time to throw 3 quick tips? 3 other things is ask yourself.
All right, real quick.
Are you making excuses? Are you taking blame and responsibility? People say, well, if I'm only a little bit nicer, if I go do it, he'll treat me better if I only give a little bit more. The second thing is, I would say people, do not be afraid to pull the plug at any point. You're never too involved to cut your losses and get away. And, again, a mature, respectful person, if you say, I need to step back and take a little time off from us, I can just slow down, a mature, respectful person will have no problem with that. He might say, gosh, I'm having such a great time seeing you. I'd love to see you more, but I respect and will give you the space you need. So I would say to people, never be afraid to step back, never be afraid to slow down. And when you ask for that, the response you get can tell you a lot. And the last thing is if you do disengage or if you do have doubts and you think you see emotional predator qualities in this person you're dating, I would say resist the huge temptation to want to tell them what you see. If we are emotional predators, it makes it worse when you show, well, wait a minute, you're an emotional predator in these ways, or you're doing these things that you know are the traits of an emotional predator. I say to people, know it, don't show it if you're dealing with an emotional predator. And anyway, those are some tips I think that people have found to be helpful.
Those are great tips. And I remember even with a romance scammer that I fell for early on in my dating online, and I did some research on it, and they said, do not share that with them. Don't tell them that you know, because they'll just strengthen their case for the next person. I did, report them to the site. I blocked them, and I found, oh my God, this one person had so many complaints against him on a site for romance scammers. So, it's just we have to get smarter, and you can't talk logic with a person who is not logical. I think that's an important reminder.
Yes, arguing with a crazy person is great.
Yeah, it's crazy making.
That's so true what you just said. You tell them what you see, and you're just telling them how to cover up better, how to hide better.
Yep. Yeah,
that's
exactly. Yeah. So we don't help anybody by calling somebody out on who's this kind of pathology. So Stephen, this has been wonderful. Tell our audience how they can reach you and get a copy of your book.
Well, the book is called Protecting Yourself from Emotional Predators. If you go to Amazon and type in Protecting Yourself from Emotional Predators, it should come right up. And you can also get links and more information about this kind of stuff from the website I set up for this, which is emotionalpredators.com. And they can reach me through that if people have specific questions about, somebody they're dealing with and they're not quite sure what's going on. So emotionalpredators.com is a good way to reach me, and Protecting Yourself from Emotional Predators is the name of the book, and you can get it on Amazon.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for keeping people safe and sharing this really important information. I wish I had it decades ago, and now that we have it, it's important to share it, right?
That is the number one comment I get from people who read the book. They go, "Oh my God, I wish I'd read this before I met my ex."
Yep.
Other
but
comments.
That's how we grow, though. It's really just become stronger and pay it forward and not live a life of regrets.
That's what I say to people. I say, well, thank goodness you're reading it now, so you won't have another ex like that one. You won't go down that road.
Exactly. So thanks for keeping us safe out there, Stephen.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
My pleasure. And thanks, everybody, for listening today. And I hope you go on your last first date very soon. And don't forget, if you love our show, please rate and review us. Spread the word. Tell more people to tune in to Last First Date Radio. Have a great day.